My name is Melanie Thompson, and at 34 years old, I thought I understood what motherhood meant. Standing in my kitchen at 6:30 this morning, preparing breakfast for my 3-year-old daughter Emma, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Real, genuine peace. It's funny how clarity comes when you finally stop trying to fix what was never meant to work. See, for the longest time, I believed I was struggling because being a mother was hard. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't just raising one child, I was raising two. One was my beautiful growing 3-year-old daughter. The other was a grown man who lied, disappeared, and expected to be cared for like the child he'd never stopped being. Before I share how I discovered the shocking truth about my marriage, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button. If you've ever felt overwhelmed in a relationship, and subscribe, because this story will show you exactly why choosing yourself is always the right choice. Now let me take you back to where it all began to unravel. I met Jake Patterson when I was 28. We crossed paths through mutual friends at a brewery in Denver, and I thought I'd found my person. He was charming, funny, and after 6 months of what felt like the perfect romance, he proposed to me at Red Rocks Amphitheater. The setting was magical, the moment felt destined, and I said yes without hesitation. Everything seemed to align perfectly for our future together. When Emma came into our lives, the pregnancy was difficult, but Jake appeared supportive during those early months. However, as time passed, something shifted. The man who once anticipated my needs began requiring constant attention to his own. We lived in a 3-bedroom house in Lakewood, where Jake worked construction with an increasingly irregular income that made budgeting nearly impossible. My daily routine became a carefully orchestrated dance of responsibility. I handled all childcare duties, managed every household task, and worked part-time as a graphic designer from our home office. Meanwhile, Jake developed patterns that left me questioning my own expectations. He would arrive home late without explanation, leaving me to handle Emma's dinner, bath time, and bedtime routine alone. When he did come home, he'd leave messes throughout the house, expecting them to disappear by morning. Jake demanded dinner ready when he walked through the door, but never offered to help with Emma's increasingly complex needs as she grew. His evenings were spent gaming in the living room while I managed the intricate ballet of toddler care, potty training, speech development, pediatrician appointments that he never attended. Each responsibility fell squarely on my shoulders, while he remained disconnected from the very family he'd helped create. The financial stress mounted as Jake's paychecks became inconsistent and unreliable. I found myself covering shortfalls from my savings money I'd worked hard to accumulate before our marriage. Secret spending became apparent through receipts I'd find for expensive electronics that Jake claimed were necessary work tools. When I questioned these purchases, he'd become defensive and redirect the conversation to my apparent lack of trust. Our social life deteriorated as friends stopped visiting due to Jake's consistently rude behavior during gatherings. Family events became awkward affairs, where I found myself apologizing for his attitude or making excuses for his absence. The isolation was gradual but complete, leaving me to handle everything alone while maintaining the facade that everything was fine. My physical health began reflecting the emotional toll of this lifestyle. I averaged 4 hours of sleep each night, developed constant headaches, and started losing weight from stress and exhaustion. The first major red flag appeared when I discovered receipts for expensive electronics hidden in his truck. When confronted, Jake insisted these were essential work tools, but his explanations never quite aligned with what I knew about his job requirements. Emma's developmental needs continued expanding as she reached new milestones, but Jake remained conspicuously absent from these important moments. Doctor appointments, developmental assessments, and the daily victories and challenges of raising a toddler became my sole responsibility. I began to feel like a single parent while still being married, carrying the full weight of family life without partnership or support. The first concrete evidence of deception arrived through Jake's unlocked phone. Text messages from an unknown woman named Samantha revealed conversations that made my stomach drop. When I attempted to address this discovery, Jake's reaction was explosive. He accused me of being paranoid, violated his privacy, and turned the situation around to make me feel guilty for uncovering his betrayal. Determined to understand the scope of what I was dealing with, I began investigating further. Hidden credit card statements in our garage revealed expensive restaurant charges that coincided perfectly with Jake's claims of working overtime. The timeline was unmistakable. Every evening he'd told me he was staying late for construction projects, he was actually dining at upscale restaurants with someone else. My research led me to Samantha's social media profiles, where I found photos taken at locations Jake had specifically mentioned as work sites. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Not only was he lying about his whereabouts, but he was also using our financial resources to fund these deceptions. Each discovery felt like another piece of my reality crumbling away. The financial deception went deeper than I'd imagined. A secret credit card carried $4,000 in debt I knew nothing about. Cash withdrawals from our joint account had been made without my knowledge or permission. When I traced these transactions, they aligned perfectly with his supposed overtime shifts. Jake had been systematically draining our resources while lying about his activities and whereabouts. An unexpected phone call to his construction supervisor revealed another layer of dishonesty. Jake had been taking days off without informing me, claiming sick leave, while telling me he was working mandatory overtime. The supervisor expressed concern about Jake's recent attendance issues, something I knew nothing about despite managing our family's schedule and finances. Emma began sensing the tension in our home. Her sweet 3-year-old voice would ask, "Where's Daddy?" more frequently, and I struggled to explain his absences in age-appropriate terms. My friend Michelle witnessed one of Jake's disrespectful outbursts during a visit and pulled me aside to express her concerns about his treatment of both Emma and me. Sleepless nights became my norm as I stayed awake creating spreadsheets of inconsistencies in Jake's stories. Every lie was documented, every timeline mapped out, every financial discrepancy recorded. The evidence painted a clear picture of systematic deception that had been ongoing for months, possibly longer. My body began manifesting the stress through panic attacks, hair loss, and constant nausea. Jake's response to my deteriorating health was to accuse me of being controlling and dramatic. He threatened to leave whenever I brought up concerns, using my fear of becoming a single mother as leverage to silence my questions. The discovery of a second woman, Ashley, through a different phone number Jake thought he'd successfully deleted, confirmed that his betrayal wasn't limited to one relationship. The scope of his deception was far more extensive than I'd imagined, involving multiple women and a web of lies that extended into every aspect of our shared life. Friday evening brought a new level of deception that would ultimately change everything. Jake announced he had a weekend construction job in Fort Collins, something that seemed routine given his work patterns. However, his behavior that evening struck me as unusual. He packed significantly more clothes than typical weekend work would require and avoided making eye contact with Emma during their goodnight routine. Saturday morning brought an unexpected revelation through our neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. She mentioned seeing Jake loading his truck with golf clubs rather than work tools. This detail immediately raised red flags, as Jake had specifically told me he'd be working on a foundation project that would require his complete focus and attention. My attempts to reach Jake throughout Saturday were unsuccessful. His phone went straight to voicemail, and the construction company's office was closed for the weekend, making verification impossible. Emma's distress became apparent as she cried for Daddy, and I struggled to explain his absence while managing my own growing anxiety about his whereabouts. Sunday evening arrived without any contact from Jake. He'd promised to return Sunday afternoon, but there was no communication, no explanation, and no consideration for the worry he was causing. Monday morning brought a shocking discovery when I called his construction office. Jake had called in sick 3 days prior, meaning his entire weekend story was fabricated. The bank account revelation that Monday was devastating. A major withdrawal had been made Saturday morning, leaving our account nearly emptied without my knowledge or consent. This financial betrayal coincided with his disappearance, suggesting premeditation that went far beyond spontaneous poor judgment. Further investigation revealed Jake's Facebook check-in at a mountain resort with a woman matching Ashley's description. The pieces fell into place with brutal clarity. Jake had chosen a romantic weekend getaway with another woman over helping prepare for his daughter's birthday party. The priority he'd assigned to his secret relationship versus his family responsibilities was crystal clear. Emma's birthday preparation became my solitary responsibility. I decorated our home, baked her cake, and prepared for her celebration while explaining to a 3-year-old why Daddy wasn't there to help. The emotional weight of managing her disappointment while processing my own betrayal was almost unbearable. Extended family members began asking questions about Jake's absence that I couldn't answer honestly. Lying to his parents and sister about his whereabouts added another layer of humiliation to an already devastating situation. I was protecting his reputation while he was actively destroying our family. Wednesday brought Jake's return, but instead of apologies or explanations, he was angry that I'd tracked his activities. He claimed there had been a work emergency that required his immediate attention, but his defensive anger revealed the weakness of his fabricated story. The final straw came when he called me clingy and suffocating while Emma played nearby, oblivious to the destruction happening around her. Our neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, witnessed several of Jake's increasingly loud arguments with me and offered her support. Her kindness highlighted how isolated I'd become and how abnormal our household dynamics had grown. My graphic design work began suffering as emotional distress made concentration nearly impossible. Emma's behavioral changes became more pronounced during this period. Her tantrums increased, she regressed in potty training, and her normally independent nature shifted toward clingy behavior. Even at 3 years old, she was absorbing the tension and instability that had become our family's constant state. Thursday morning brought the moment that changed everything. Jake stood in our kitchen demanding breakfast while Emma cried in her high chair, and suddenly I saw our situation with startling clarity. The parallel between their behaviors was impossible to ignore. Both were demanding immediate attention and service without consideration for others. Both expected their needs to be prioritized above everyone else's, including each other's. The behavioral comparison became undeniable as I mentally cataloged their actions. Emma would ask politely for help while Jake demanded service. Both left messes expecting cleanup, but Emma was learning to take responsibility while Jake actively avoided it. Both required constant attention and validation, but only Emma was developmentally appropriate in these needs. What shocked me most was realizing that Emma was actually showing more emotional growth and maturity than Jake. She was learning to say please and thank you, to wait her turn, to share her toys with friends. Meanwhile, Jake threw tantrums when denied immediate gratification and had never learned basic emotional regulation skills that my 3-year-old was mastering. Jake's dependency patterns became glaringly obvious once I started paying attention. He'd never paid a bill independently during our marriage, requiring me to manage all financial responsibilities. Medical appointments, social obligations, even relationships with his own family members required my management and coordination. He couldn't prepare meals beyond microwave instructions and expected praise for minimal household contributions. The emotional labor I'd been carrying became overwhelming when viewed objectively. I managed Jake's relationships with his family and friends, remembered important dates and obligations, and smoothed over conflicts he created through his thoughtless behavior. This emotional caretaking was exhausting and completely one-sided. A breaking point conversation occurred when Jake complained about Emma being in a difficult phase while demonstrating identical behaviors himself. He criticized her need for attention while demanding constant focus on his own wants and needs. The irony was lost on him, but devastatingly clear to me. My friend Michelle, who worked as a counselor, visited during this period and pointed out the unhealthy dynamics she observed. Her professional perspective helped me recognize patterns I'd been too close to see clearly. Jake's reaction to Emma's developmental needs revealed jealousy and competition with his own daughter for my attention and care. Comparing their understanding of financial responsibility was particularly enlightening. Emma was learning that no meant no, and that resources were limited. Jake, however, had never accepted these basic concepts and continued spending without consideration for our family's financial stability or future security. The timeline of responsibility became stark when examined objectively. Emma was steadily learning consequences for her actions and developing independence appropriate to her age. Jake had been avoiding consequences and refusing independence for years, actually becoming more dependent over time rather than growing into fuller partnership. My greatest fear became the realization that I was modeling unhealthy relationship dynamics for Emma. She was learning that women serve men without reciprocation, that men's needs supersede everyone else's, and that love means accepting disrespectful treatment. The thought of her entering future relationships with these learned patterns was absolutely devastating. I began documenting examples of their parallel behaviors, creating a clear record of what I was dealing with. The documentation process helped me understand that I wasn't dealing with temporary stress or a rough patch in marriage. I was enabling an adult man's refusal to mature while simultaneously trying to raise a child who was naturally developing appropriate independence and social skills. The realization that I needed to take decisive action prompted careful strategic planning. During Emma's nap times, I began consulting with divorce attorney Sarah Williams, learning about my options and rights. These conversations had to be conducted in complete secrecy, adding another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. Financial preparation became crucial for ensuring Emma's and my security. I opened a separate bank account and began documenting all expenses that Jake's behavior had caused our family. The financial impact of his deception and irresponsibility was substantial, and I needed clear records for legal proceedings. Building a support network required reaching out to relationships I'd neglected during my marriage. My college friend Jessica in California offered emotional support and practical advice based on her own experience with divorce. These connections reminded me that isolation had been a significant factor in my inability to see my situation clearly. Emma's well-being remained my primary concern throughout this planning process. I researched child psychology resources to understand how to handle our family changes in age-appropriate ways. Preparing explanations that would protect her emotional development while being honest about our situation required careful consideration and professional guidance. Evidence gathering became a methodical process of documenting Jake's deceptions and irresponsible behaviors. Screenshots of dating profiles he'd created, financial records showing unauthorized spending, and timeline documentation of his lies provided concrete proof of his actions. This evidence would be crucial for legal proceedings and custody arrangements. Securing additional graphic design clients became essential for achieving financial independence. With a clear mind focused on our future, rather than managing Jake's chaos, I was able to expand my business and increase our income. This financial stability would be crucial for Emma's and my security moving forward. Research into living arrangements revealed that we could afford a comfortable apartment on my income alone. Exploring daycare options for Emma showed that consistent professional care would actually be more beneficial than the unpredictable environment Jake's presence created in our home. Legal consultation with attorney Sarah Williams provided crucial information about Colorado custody laws and property division. Understanding my rights and likely outcomes helped me approach the situation with confidence rather than fear. Jake's documented irresponsibility would impact custody arrangements in our favor. Emotional preparation included therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Chen, who helped me build strength for the difficult conversations ahead. These sessions also addressed the emotional patterns that had allowed me to accept unacceptable treatment for so long. Building emotional resilience became essential for protecting both Emma and myself. Practice conversations with my reflection helped me rehearse difficult discussions while Emma slept. These sessions allowed me to anticipate Jake's likely responses and prepare calm, factual replies. Staying composed during confrontation would be crucial for maintaining the upper hand and protecting Emma from witnessing conflict. Timeline establishment required careful planning to ensure Emma's safety and emotional protection during the confrontation. Scheduling the conversation after her doctor appointment meant she'd be occupied with Michelle, while Jake and I addressed our marriage's future without exposing her to potential conflict. Jake's continued deceptive behavior during this period provided additional evidence for my case. More late nights with fabricated explanations and obvious lies about overtime work showed that his patterns were escalating rather than improving. His behavior was becoming more careless, making documentation easier. The final lie occurred when Jake claimed mandatory Saturday training, while I discovered him tagged at a sports bar with friends. This blatant deception, easily disproven through social media, demonstrated his complete disregard for honesty and family commitments. It also provided perfect timing for our confrontation. Strength-building activities became essential for maintaining mental and emotional clarity. Morning runs while Emma slept, meditation during quiet moments, and journaling helped me process emotions and stay focused on our goals. Physical activity also provided an outlet for stress and anxiety. Friend support mobilization involved Michelle agreeing to watch Emma during the confrontation and provide ongoing emotional support. Having trusted people aware of the situation meant help would be available when needed. This support network would be crucial during the transition period. Property assessment and emergency planning included determining ownership of belongings and preparing for potential quick departure. Packed bags were ready, and temporary arrangements with my sister in Colorado Springs provided security if immediate relocation became necessary. These preparations ensured Emma's and my safety, regardless of Jake's reaction. Saturday evening arrived with Emma safely settled at Michelle's house and Jake returning from his fabricated training session. I had prepared carefully for this conversation, knowing it would determine our family's future. When Jake walked through the door, I calmly announced that we needed to have a serious conversation about our marriage and future. Jake's immediate reaction was defensive, attempting to deflect the conversation by claiming exhaustion from his supposed training. However, I was prepared for his avoidance tactics and remained focused on the agenda I'd carefully planned. This conversation would not be derailed by his usual manipulation techniques. The evidence presentation was systematic and undeniable. Bank statements, photographs, timeline documentation of lies, and proof of his deceptive activities were laid out clearly on our dining room table. Each piece of evidence was dated, verified, and irrefutable. Jake could not claim misunderstanding or innocent explanations for what I presented. The truth bomb moment arrived when I looked him directly in the eye and said, "I realized I'm raising 2 children, but only one is actually growing up." The impact of these words was immediate and profound. Jake's face revealed his understanding that I had seen through all his deceptions and manipulations. Jake's reaction progressed through predictable phases, each more desperate than the last. Initial denial and gaslighting attempts failed when confronted with documented evidence. His anger and blame shifting toward me fell flat because I remained calm and factual. Attempted manipulation through promises to change rang hollow, given the extensive evidence of his deceptive patterns. His final desperate tactic involved threatening to take Emma away from me, revealing his willingness to use our daughter as a weapon in his manipulation arsenal. This threat actually strengthened my resolve because it demonstrated exactly why Emma needed protection from his influence and instability. My responses remained unwavering throughout each phase of his reaction. Every claim he made was countered with documented evidence. Every attempt at emotional manipulation was met with calm facts. Years of his gaslighting had prepared me to recognize and resist his tactics, and my preparation showed in my composed, confident responses. The ultimatum I delivered was clear and non-negotiable: immediate enrollment in counseling and complete behavior change, or I would proceed with divorce. There would be no more chances, no more empty promises, and no more tolerance for disrespectful treatment of Emma or me. Jake's choice was revealing and decisive. Rather than fighting for his family or committing to change, he chose to walk out, claiming I was impossible to please. His departure demonstrated where his priorities truly lay. When faced with accountability for his actions, he chose abandonment over responsibility. The liberation moment of watching Jake leave without fighting for his family was simultaneously heartbreaking and empowering. Emma and I deserved someone who would choose us, fight for us, and prioritize our well-being. Jake's easy departure proved he had never been that person. Calling Michelle to arrange Emma's pickup allowed me to explain the basic situation while maintaining Emma's sense of security. Her 3-year-old acceptance of the explanation was actually better than expected, perhaps because the household tension she'd been feeling was finally acknowledged and addressed. Our first night alone in the house was remarkably peaceful. The bedtime routine proceeded smoothly without underlying tension, and Emma slept better than she had in months. The absence of conflict and unpredictability created space for genuine rest and recovery. Monday morning legal action began with a call to attorney Sarah Williams. The documented evidence I'd gathered provided a strong foundation for divorce proceedings and favorable custody arrangements. Jake's irresponsible behavior and abandonment of his family would not be overlooked by the court system. Jake's manipulation attempts continued through alternating text messages of apologies and threats. These communications provided additional documentation of his unstable behavior and inability to accept responsibility for his actions. Each message reinforced the correctness of my decision to end our marriage. Community support emerged as neighbors and friends rallied around Emma and me. Mrs. Rodriguez offered practical help with childcare and grocery shopping. Other neighbors expressed relief that the household tension they'd witnessed was being addressed. This support network became invaluable during our transition. The financial relief was immediate and remarkable. Without Jake's unexplained expenses and secret spending, our budget actually balanced for the first time in years. Money that had been disappearing into his deceptions was now available for Emma's needs and our future security. Emma's improvement was swift and noticeable. Her sleep quality improved, her anxiety decreased, and her normal appetite returned. The stable, peaceful environment allowed her natural personality to flourish without the stress she'd been absorbing from our household dysfunction. 6 months later, Emma and I were thriving in our smaller but peaceful apartment. The space was entirely ours, decorated with love and maintained with pride. Every decision was made with our well-being in mind, without having to consider the needs of an additional adult child who contributed nothing to our family's happiness or stability. Emma's development had accelerated remarkably in the stable environment we'd created. Her speech had advanced significantly, her confidence had blossomed, and she was developing healthy attachment patterns based on consistency and respect. The 3-year-old who had been anxious and clingy was now independent and secure. My graphic design business flourished with the mental clarity and focused energy that came from removing chaos from our daily life. Without the constant stress of managing Jake's irresponsibility, I could concentrate on building our future and creating the financial security Emma deserved. The reality of co-parenting with Jake revealed his true priorities through his inconsistent visitation schedule. He would cancel time with Emma for social plans, arrive late for pickups, and return her early when parenting became inconvenient. These patterns proved that fatherhood had never been his genuine priority. My personal healing journey included continued therapy sessions that helped me process the relationship patterns I'd accepted and understand my family dynamics better. Dr. Patricia Chen guided me through recognizing the difference between partnership and parenting adults, helping me establish healthier boundaries for future relationships. Understanding authentic partnership versus caretaking became crucial for my personal growth and Emma's modeling of healthy relationships. I learned that love doesn't require accepting disrespect, that partnership involves mutual support and responsibility, and that my worth wasn't determined by my usefulness to others. Emma's questions about our family changes were handled with age-appropriate honesty that protected her while acknowledging reality. She understood that sometimes adults make choices that aren't good for families, and that we had chosen a life that was better for both of us. Financial independence had been achieved through careful budgeting and business growth. Our savings account was growing steadily for the first time in years, providing security and options for our future. This economic stability allowed me to make decisions based on our well-being rather than financial desperation. Social life restoration brought friends back into our home and lives. People were comfortable visiting again because our environment was peaceful and welcoming. Emma was developing friendships with children from families that modeled healthy relationship dynamics. While I remained open to future romantic relationships, I was taking time to ensure any partner would enhance rather than complicate our lives. Emma needed to see that relationships should add value, joy, and support rather than stress, conflict, and additional responsibilities. The profound lesson I'd learned was that I needed to teach Emma that love doesn't require accepting disrespectful treatment. By choosing to leave an unhealthy situation, I'd modeled self-respect and shown her that she deserved to be treated with kindness and consideration in all her relationships. Breaking generational cycles became a crucial motivation for our new life direction. I was ensuring that Emma wouldn't normalize unhealthy relationship patterns or believe that women should accept less than they deserve. Her future relationships would be built on different foundations than mine had been. Self-worth discovery revealed that I deserved genuine partnership rather than additional caregiving responsibilities. A relationship should involve 2 adults supporting each other and their family, not one adult managing another adult's responsibilities while raising children independently. Jake's continued patterns with his new girlfriend validated my decision to leave. Friends reported that she was experiencing similar treatment, confirming that his behavior wasn't situational but fundamental to his character. I felt relief rather than satisfaction knowing Emma and I had escaped that cycle. Emma's stability in our predictable, peaceful environment allowed her personality to flourish authentically. She was developing confidence, independence, and social skills that had been suppressed during the chaos of our previous living situation. Her growth validated every difficult decision I'd made. Our community connections expanded to include mom groups, neighborhood friendships, and professional networks that enriched our lives immeasurably. Emma was learning that families come in many forms, and that love and respect are the foundations of healthy relationships regardless of structure. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop raising someone else's potential and start nurturing your own reality. I thought I was choosing between marriage and single motherhood, but I was actually choosing between chaos and peace, between teaching my daughter to accept less or to expect more. The best gift I ever gave Emma wasn't a stable 2-parent home with dysfunction, but a strong single mother who knew her worth. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns in your own relationships, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve partnership, respect, and love that doesn't require you to shrink yourself or accept unacceptable behavior. Trust your instincts, document what you're experiencing, and remember that sometimes protecting your children means showing them what self-respect looks like in action. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you felt more like a parent than a partner? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real conversations about choosing yourself and your children over situations that don't serve you. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone and that choosing peace over chaos is always the right decision. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting women who are finding the courage to choose better for themselves and their families. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and you deserve relationships that celebrate, rather than diminish your worth. Until next time, keep choosing yourself and keep growing.